Do you want to get the best out of your team this year? Well, if you do, then follow these 5 simple steps and you will have the best year yet with your team. My name's Sonia Gavira and I'm a leadership coach, mentor and business strategist, and I'm here to help you build and sustain the most amazing team that's engaged, that's loyal, that's motivated, and to do so with both ease and fun. Now, if you don't want to miss out on any of my tips, then subscribe to the channel here below and get an alert whenever I post a new video on here. So, one of the things that we can all be guilty of doing is being on this sort of treadmill. When we go from one project to the next, from one thing to the next, and we're always looking forward. Now, don't get me wrong, looking forward is essential. We need to look forward. That's where the future lies. But sometimes, and often, more often than we do, we need to pause. We need to pause, we need to stop, and we need to celebrate. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is, before you move on to the next thing with your team, I'm going to encourage you to pause. And I'm going to encourage you to pause in a way that you celebrate everything that's gone before and you celebrate what's coming up. So I want you to find some time to sit down with your team, whether that's virtually, online, whether that's face-to-face, depending on when you are looking at this and the structure of your team. But I want you to take some time with your team and I want you to set it up as if it's a celebration of being together, a celebration of everything that you've achieved, a celebration of everything that you've got to come. And then I want you to talk about these 5 things. Number 1, I want you to talk about the successes. I want you to go round the room and one by one talk about what it is that has worked really well, what it is that you as an individual and also as a team have had success with. And I want you to make sure that these are not just the big things but also the small things. So I want you to go around the team with every single person saying something, and what I want you to do is to go around the team at least twice, because the first time you go round, everybody will come up with what's there already top of mind. When you go round a second time and even a third time, if you've had an amazing year, then people will have to start to really dig deep, to think about what are the little things that have been successful, what are the little things that they're proud of, and you have to also talk about those things. If people are only talking about the big things, talk about some of the small ones, to give permission to everybody in the room to do that also. But I don't want this to be just mentioning what it is that went well. What I want you to do is encourage everybody to say what the success was, say what made it a success, and what you have learnt from it, which then means what are you going to take forward. So those are 4 things: what the success was, what made it a success, what did you learn from it, and what are you going to take forward. So that's number 1. Number 2 are the failures and mistakes. And here it's really important that you go first. Why? Because if you go first and you are really vulnerable, you are really honest, and you talk about the failures that you've had, the mistakes that you've made, not only the mistakes of the team, then you give permission to everybody else to be just as vulnerable. And this is going to mean that you're going to start to generate that trust, that acceptance, that permission to talk about things that go wrong. And that is critical, because the foundation of any team is trust. and this is what you're going to be building. So in the same way, I want you to talk about and go round the room, and I want you to talk about what was it that went wrong, big and small. What was it that contributed to that mistake or to that failure? What did you learn, and what are you going to take forward? So those are the 4 things again. Number 3, and again, you need to go first. I want you to talk about fears. I want you to talk about what it is that you're afraid of. So what am I afraid of? What are we also afraid of collectively? Where do those fears come from? And what can we do collectively to allay those fears? And it may be that first of all, you talk about what your fears are, and everybody then talks about it and goes one by one and says what it is that they're afraid of. Where does that fear come from? And then have a discussion about what you can do collectively about it. And this will allow you to talk about it from an individual personal perspective, but also as a team and collectively. So you're starting to really get to understand things that go beyond the surface. Then number 4, I want you to talk about struggles. So what am I struggling with? What is that struggle stopping me from doing? And who can help? So what am I struggling with? What is that struggle stopping me from doing or achieving? And who can help? And everybody go around the room again. And again, this is one that you need to go first. You need to go first because that will then give permission to everybody else in the team to be really honest. And then finally, number 5, I want you to talk about hopes and dreams. Now, these are the plans, but by framing them as hopes and dreams, you allow people to talk about their own personal hopes and dreams as well as those for the team. And it's in this one, rather than you going first, I want you to let the rest of the team go first, because otherwise you risk everybody just copying you. If you talk about the business part of it, then they're just going to want the same thing, or there's a risk of that. So if you decide that you're going to go first because nobody's really talking about it, then I want you first of all to focus on your own personal hopes and dreams. What is it that you want for this coming year? And that will enable everybody else to do the same. And that's when you start planning for the future. But you start planning with all that knowledge and that information about what's gone before. Okay? And then it's the case of having a conversation about the conversation. So what was useful? What are you going to take forward? And who's going to be responsible for what? And I'd encourage you to do this more than once a year. I'd encourage you to do this at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of every quarter. Maybe you want to do it at the end of a big project so that you can really look at what you learnt together, what you need to go forward, and what are the things that you're going to put in place. So as I've said, this is not just a process to review a project or review a year even, or a quarter. It's a process that is going to enable you to engage your team, that's going to enable you to generate innovation, creativity, and above all, trust with your team. So if you don't want to miss any of my tips and hints, please subscribe to my channel. Put a comment about what it is, what's the main question here that you think is going to generate the most response for your team. And if there's anything else that I can help you with, if you have a question for me, please put it down below. I look at all the comments and do my very best to respond. And I hope to catch you again soon. So please subscribe to the channel. If there's a bell, ring the bell so that you get notified when I'm live, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Bye.